My pleasure now to introduce our guest for this evening. Richard Sheridan has spent 20 years working to end human suffering in the workplace through his company, Menlo Innovations. Menlo's unique approach to custom software creation is so surprisingly different that 3,000 people a year travel from around the world just to see how they do it. I expect they've seen a bit of a decline in that number in the past little while, but that's been the trend over time. Seems a key element of building a workplace filled with camaraderie, human energy, creativity, and productivity is joy. Richard's two books, the best-selling Joy Inc., How to Build a Workplace People Love, and more recently, Chief Joy Officer, demonstrate that a positive and engaging leadership style builds psychological safety, which we all know is actually good for business. Over to you, Rich.
Awesome. Great. Wonderful to be with you all tonight. I'm just going to have a few slides up here, and mainly the slides are to generate conversation for our last 15 minutes together. This is actually a summary of what has happened to Menlo. We've been in business for 20 years. I talk about the fact that there's been 3 different versions of the company to date, 18 and a half years of what I now refer to as traditional Menlo, 18 months of pandemic Menlo, and whatever's coming next, I'm calling emerging Menlo. And all that means is I have no idea what's coming next, but it's evolving as we go. And so I'm going to just show you a few pictures. These slides are actually part of a virtual tour we do that is free and available twice a week to anybody who wants to come. So I'm not going to belabor the slides too much. As Tom said, we have this crazy mission to end human suffering in the world as it relates to technology. We thought it was actually possible to bring joy back to software development, and that is what we've been working on for 20 years. As Tom said, a lot of people come and visit. We usually get 3,000 to 4,000 people a year. Of course, that all ended when the pandemic started. But in June of 2020, we ran an experiment, which is our nature. And we said, let's try a virtual tour and see if anybody wants to come. Holy cow, did they. We have had visitors from 65 countries and 39 states and counting, thousands of visitors coming again. And the delightful thing about the virtual tours is they are 100% free because there's no flight, there's no hotel room, there's no time travel or anything like that. It's just click on a link, come visit, go back to your whatever your work was that day. For those who are not familiar with Menlo, I wanted to give you just a little bit of a sense of what people see when they come see us. We have this one big open collaborative environment, no walls, no offices, no cubes, no doors, people working 2 to a computer sitting side by side. The pairs are assigned. We switch them at least every 5 working days. The team is in charge of the space. They form it however they choose. And for all of our years, they have chosen to push the tables side to side and front to front. They want to be this close to one another. They are in conversation with each other all day long. It is a noisy, vibrant environment of human communication, what we love to call high-speed voice technology. This has been Menlo for 18 and a half years. And I will tell you that it was delightful. It was joyful. I loved coming into work. The human energy was palpable in this room. I know a couple of you on this call have been there. But in that week of March 16th of 2020, it was like a fire drill. Get out of the building, get out as fast as you can, because this would probably have been named one of the most dangerous workplaces in the world if you're trying to stop a spread of a pandemic. And of course, then we had to take this thing apart. All the practices had to change. But the principles of teamwork and collaboration and trust and communication, the human relationships, the empathy we have for each other and those we serve, and the human energy of the team, fortunately remained. And I will tell you, I was panicky about that. I wasn't sure what was going to come. And we embraced absolutely the physical distancing that would be required to be safe and healthy. Everybody went home, figured out, like all of you did, I'm sure, where do I set up my home office? What corner of the house or my apartment do I use? But we completely rejected the idea of social distancing. Now, those who come to visit Menlo know that one of our stalwart work practices is this idea of 2 people working at one computer. This is Ben and Ian, 2 of our programmers. Everybody pairs at Menlo. This is just pair programming. But Ben and Ian paired together all day long, working shoulder to shoulder, side by side, keyboard and mouse flipping back and forth. And they would be paired together for, like I said, at most 5 days, and then the pairs switch. Their collaboration partners on the project they're working on are sitting right near them, so it's easy for them to come over and have these little sidebar discussions before they get back to work on whatever problem they're trying to solve. And this has been this just central gear of Menlo for 18 and a half years. We may be one of the longest running experiments in paired programming in human history, because we've been doing it since June of 2001. Now everybody wanted to know, what does it look like now? How does it work? Well, this is pairing in a virtual environment. Pair partner on the right screen, shared code on the left screen, attending daily stand-up. We think the cat is a big part of the culture. We're not sure exactly what role the cat plays. We think it's QA. I'll let you make a judgment on that at the end of this little short time-lapse video here. But this is Sarah and Ethan, again, paired together for at most 5 days, co-creating code together. And you probably have questions about how all that works and that sort of thing. You'll also see they have the ability, of course, to call in other pairs to talk with them about problems they're trying to solve. They'll be joined here in a second by Helen and Nicole, who chime in. They discuss some issue they're having and then back to work. And so this has been Menlo, pandemic Menlo for 18 months. And now we're in emerging Menlo, where both of them could be in the office, one could be at home, both could be at home. So we're trying to figure this out. I won't go through that part. I think that's, well, here's one fun little sequence. And then again, I want to leave it open for questions, because I know you guys will have fascinating questions, and I can flip back to some of these slides if we need them. Our daily stand-up would happen every day at 10 o'clock, called by this alarm in the dartboard. We don't know why dartboards need alarms. Classic iconic symbol of Menlo is the 2-horn plastic Viking helmet, because at our stand-up we work in pairs, we report out in pairs, and having a 2-handled talking stick is really convenient. And the babies, we got babies at Menlo. You can ask me about that if you want. That's not mine, that's Lisa's, and I was just helping with that. But of course, can't do a 65-person stand-up when you're all at home. So we thought, well, let's try Zoom. And it was a complete and utter disaster. Nobody knew who was first, who was next. One of the hallmarks of our daily stand-up is it typically takes 13 minutes. We believe meetings are mind-numbing, spirit-sucking, energy-draining devices of management. So the ones we have, we keep short. Well, our Zoom stand-up meeting was taking like 40 minutes, because nobody knew who was paired with whom. Nobody knew if everybody gone, who's next, all that kind of stuff. So the team said, well, let's create the virtual Viking helmet. Let's just type in our names as we arrive and who our pair partner is into the Zoom chat. And that lines us all up. And delightfully, our daily stand-up got down to 13 minutes again, which was great. And so the pandemic Zoom meeting worked well. And then we started returning to the office, but not everybody. So we had to figure out how to combine these. And so here's a video of what stand-up looks like now, where the people in the office gather in the circle, but the circle turns because what they're doing is they're lining themselves up next to the microphone that's next to the Zoom screen. That's a big television. And so they get a chance to see their peers who are in the office, and we get a chance to look at all the peers that are home. So we keep running these experiments to figure out how to do all this stuff. And so again, there's a lot of those things we do, and a lot of paper-based artifacts that had to be switched to electronic and that. But I'll stop there. There's lots of things I can talk about, and anything's fair game. Just feel free to throw questions at me.
Rich, I mean, that was a whirlwind tour. And for those of us that have had the pleasure and opportunity to be there, it's interesting to see how things have evolved. I'm curious I mean, I've got a whole pile of questions here, and folks, if you do have questions for Rich, throw them in the chat window. A couple of people have already pinged me in the background, and that's great. I'll get to your questions as well. But the first thing that sort of jumped out at me, or maybe it was the last thing, I don't know, I've lost track, was that idea of that virtual meeting that you've got, where half the people are in the office and half the people are working remotely. Are your pairs coming into the office together, or are some pairs working from home and one pair is in the office? And then how is that working through your meeting?
Yes. So the answer is there is no guarantee that if it's easily the case that one of the pair partners is in the office and the other one is at home. And what's fun about that now, and the team continues to be playful, which is kind of a core tenet of ours. And somebody called us this way back when, and I just loved it. They said, Menlo is whimsically irreverent about standard corporate business practices. And so we have this plastic Viking helmet that runs a serious business meeting, right? So that's us not taking ourselves too seriously. Well, what was fun was, as the pairs started coming back, they'd still grab the Viking helmet, but if their pair partner was on the television screen, they would hold the Viking helmet near the camera so their pair partner could kind of simulate holding their side of the Viking helmet. And then Jenny, one of our programmers who had just joined us, got into and she drew a picture of a plastic Viking helmet and held it up near it. And so, yes, the team continues to play, but if one's in the office and one's on there, they'll just introduce themselves because we're polite to one another. And I'll say, good morning, I'm Rich. And you'd say, good morning, I'm Jeff. And one or the other of us would talk about what we're working on. And what's really neat is to watch how sensitive the team is. If I'm the one in the office and I'm doing all the talking about what we're working on, before they pass it on to the next pair, they always politely ask, Jeff, was that everything? Is there anything you want to say? Because I think one of the challenges of the hybrid environment is that often the people on the electronic part of it start to feel like second-class citizens. They start to feel not quite included and that sort of thing. And I just find that little politeness that I see our team do is really, really good evidence of how much they care about each other.
As you're passing the helmet around in the office these days, is it being cleaned between each person?
No, it's not, but right next to it. And so as the team is spinning around, they literally walk up behind the television screen to get on the other side. And so they set the helmet down or hand it to the next pair. And on the other side of the television is the Purell bottle. And then so as soon as they get around, they hit the Purell bottle and you see the people who just touched the Viking helmet washing their hands.
It looks like we're going to stick with the stand-up here for a minute because someone sent me a note, and I'm going to paraphrase it for a variety of reasons, mostly because we want this on YouTube. 13 minutes for a stand-up with 65 people? Baloney. And I'm paraphrasing what was in the chat here. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I will tell you, come and visit. I've looked at it this morning. We got done. We don't time it. All I do is I look at the clock because remember that dartboard goes off at 10 and when it gets done, invariably 10:13. And everybody talks. Everybody introduces themselves. They talk about what they're working on. They ask for help if they need it. The reason our stand-ups are short, and I get it, you got to see it to believe it, and you can come to a virtual tour or we could do a virtual stand-up with you if you want and participate and see how it works. But the reason our stand-ups are short is we do not solve problems as stand-up, we only raise them. So if I say, I need help with X, Y, or Z, is there anyone can help me? Somebody says, I can help with that. And the way we keep it short is the next phrase that happens that is a standard of Menlo. It is simply me saying, then see me after stand-up.
That's great. Look, a lot of the questions coming in right now are on tactical things. How do you do this? How does that happen? I'd love to maybe just extract those back for a little bit and really talk before we talk about the how you do these things, because I can keep going on this. But I'd love to talk, Rich, a little bit more about how you've stayed true to your values and the things that you talked about. I mean, you glossed over them. How do you make sure that those stay true and are embodied in everything that you're doing?
I've believed for a long time, and it came so much to the forefront right now. We have talked for years on our tours and the books I write and the talks I give, and anybody at Menlo would talk about the fact that we have created this intentionally joyful culture. And it was there. It was tangible. It was palpable. And I would often say there are two reasons that Menlo exists to this day. Ignore the pandemic stuff, to pre-pandemic, classic Menlo. Why does Menlo exist? Number one, the team believes in how we work, how we do what we do, and why we exist. They just truly down in their hearts believe in it. And number two, they wanted to live to see another day. because most of the people who work for us have worked somewhere in industry, and they come here and they're saying, for God's sakes, don't ever send me back, right? And so I think those two core values kept the team in place and kept the values in place. And I will tell you, I was not leading that. They led it. And simply put, I was panicky. I was like, I don't know if this thing survives. I'm an old guy. I was used to the 18 and a half years. I was set in my ways. And all of a sudden, the whole thing gets torn apart. And I'm like, wow, we can't have tours. We can't do our high-tech anthropology practice because nobody's going out in the world and studying anybody anywhere. You know, and I'll tell you, you know, our high-tech anthropology practice is how most of our projects start. These are the people, the high-tech anthropologists on our team, go out into the world and study the people we intend to serve with the software we're designing, right? And so we can't do that anymore. And this is like how all of our projects start. And right at this moment, I'm thinking, we're screwed. How are we going to be Menlo if we can't do this? This is like a quarter of my team are high-tech anthropologists. And I didn't say any of that to them, right? Because, you know, I'm supposed to be the strong leader and that sort of thing. And, oh, this is being recorded, isn't it? Darn it. No, that's okay. I'm just kidding. And so Molly, one of our senior high-tech anthropologists, on the first project we were working on in the pandemic, leans in and says, this will be so exciting to figure out how to do this. And I will tell you, that was a pivotal moment for me. Because as soon as I heard her say that, my conclusion was, oh my, we are going to be okay. Because that's the spirit and energy of this team. And I will simply say it this way. On all those principles you saw there in that list, they led me.
That's really cool. I love the creating that intentional environment and then letting them lead. I got to tell you, Rich, one of the things that surprised me when you agreed to do this is that you're here on your own.
Yeah, it's only because it's 6:30 at night, and we have this crazy culture of no overtime at Menlo. Otherwise, I'd have a pair partner here with me.
You talked a little bit about your high-tech anthropologists. Can you talk a little bit more about their role and how it's evolved, and maybe just help everyone who doesn't know what a high-tech anthropologist is understand how difficult and challenging it is when they can't interact with people?
Yeah, well, they can. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. And that's what they figured out how to do, just like we all have. But the high-tech anthropology team, if you ever study lean, this is our go to the Gemba team. This is the people who get out of the building and go study people, not interview them, but observe them first in their native environment, learn their vocabulary, their workflow, their habits, their goals as human beings. Ask clarifying questions, bring that information back, and iteratively and incrementally, does that sound a little bit like Agile? This is just as Agile a design practice as our software developers use, and design a user experience based on what we learned, and then take it back out into the world long before software is built, and using often paper-based prototypes, allow potential end users to interact with it, watch where they make common mistakes, humbly bite their tongue and not say, well, you're just supposed to touch it right here, which is how programmers would do it and how I did it when I was coding, but rather humbly take it back and say, oh, what were you expecting it to do? And then scratch out something, put a new post-it note right and say, so what would you do now if we add this? Oh yeah, that's the button I touch right there. And so the anthropologists at the very beginning sound a lot more like business analysts. They're trying to answer three basic questions. What problem are we actually trying to solve? Who exactly are we trying to solve it for? What type of people? And what is the best design for that solution? And so in working through their work, they're spending a lot of time going out into the world. And that's where I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? And we got this project with this company down in Texas that does like pipes and that sort of thing for the oil and gas industry. And I'm like, guys, how are you going to do this? And they're like, oh, we're just going to do interviews. We're just going to set up Zoom calls. We're going to, and the key thing, what they do, and this is, a big trade secret, don't tell anybody this, is they get people to think out loud while they're doing work. And just, because most people are unconsciously competent at what they do. And so you can't actually interview people about their work because they actually will leave out the most important details because to them it's obvious. But our team watching them work, sharing a screen saying, yep, this is what I do here. This is why I do it. And then our team will ask questions. So what does that mean over there? And why did you do this thing? And a lot of times they'll make lots of mistakes while they're doing it and they'll oh, I never make that mistake. And then we find out every user makes the same mistake. And we're like, okay, but we're very gentle herd, so we don't criticize them for the mistakes, but we just take notes about what we see. And then we find out everybody's making the same mistake with the old system. And then we listen. We'll ask them questions like, if you had a magic wand, what would you like this to do now? And all this sort of thing. But this is the anthropology practice. And this is the part where I thought, this is like the signature dish of Menlo. This is our design thinking team. These are our analysts at one end and our user experience designers at the other end, but it's all in the same humans. And oh, by the way, our anthropologists pair just like our programmers do. Our anthropologists never work alone. And so, and it's critical to get those different perspectives, and we switch them around even more frequently than we do the programmers.
Very cool. I'm going to switch topics just a little bit here. Probably an easier question. Can you talk a little bit about the tools that you're using for virtual and remote pairing?
Yes. So my understanding, and believe me, if you really want to know the exact answers to all these questions, come on one of our virtual tours. I'm not trying to advertise it. We don't charge anything for it. We bring in pairs of our people, usually our programmers, join in for about 15 minutes, and you can ask them all the detailed questions you want. But on one side, the side they're watching each other on, they are typically using Google Meets or Google Hangouts with each other. They just tend to prefer that technology over Zoom for whatever reason. They keep a little research panel open so they can be Googling stuff while they're going. And then on the other screen where they're sharing the code, what they're typically doing is using ConnectWise to both virtually log into a computer that's back at Menlo, which I'm in Menlo every day now. And it's just bizarre to walk around the office and you're watching all these computers like doing the work of the team, but the humans, often aren't there. I mean, unless one half of the pair is there. And so that's what they're doing. That's how that works.
How flexible are you is Menlo with the tools? Can people choose whatever tool they want?
Absolutely. And we have no hard and fast standards. So the team is picking new tools all the time and they're sharing with each other. Now, typically, if it's a tool like an IDE or something like that on a particular project for a particular language that they're doing, within that project, the team will agree on which tools they're going to use. And a lot of times that might be dictated by our customer, because a lot of our projects, half of the pair is a customer's programmer, which we've been doing for 7 years. So we kind of knew how to do this remote pairing thing for a long time, but we just never done it at the scale of the whole company.
Very cool. We're getting close to 6:30, but I got a couple of questions to go. I hope I can try and sneak these in. I might not get to all of them, but we'll get to that in a minute. In that answer, Rich, you just mentioned, come on a tour, and you've mentioned that a few times. How do I sign up to get a virtual tour?
Go on our website, menloinnovations.com. In fact, I'll just show you here. Let's see. I will just show you. Safari share. Let's see. Oh, it's not coming up. Anyways, it would take too long just because I'm not pushing the right buttons. Go on our website. Right at the top says tours, classes and tours. Click on tours. Sign up for it's one of the first things that pops up is the virtual tour, and it's free. And
very cool.
Typically 2 or 3 a week. So lots of different times you can come in and join.
We managed to get there for you. We've just dropped the link in the chat, so you can get to the website and to the tour itself.
You can't walk and push buttons at the same time, or talk and push buttons at the same time. So.
No problem. You'll notice that John and I pair as well on these meetups. So let me try and get through 2 more questions, which I think hopefully is going to get it. The next one hopefully is a short one as well. You talked about pair programming. You talked about pairing for your high-tech anthropologist. I know your project managers pair as well on some of the things that they're doing. Have you played around with or experimented with mob or ensemble programming?
We have a little bit, and I have tremendous respect for what's happening there and what Woody Zool is doing and others, and I'm just fascinated with it. I think the only business challenge we have in that, it would make our customers really nervous. So the times we've done some mob programming experimentation, we have done it on internal projects, and I think there's some disciplines there that I've seen Woody teach. I actually, the last time I kind of officially programmed was actually in a Woody Zool seminar, and I hadn't programmed probably for 20 years before that. And I'm like, wow, I can actually contribute in a conversation like this. And Woody's such a great teacher of this stuff. But I saw some of the disciplines that Woody teaches, and I thought, yeah, we didn't. I mean, we probably were very we were just trying, getting a bunch of people around a computer, and I just saw the way Woody did it, and I loved it.
When you hire at Menlo, you do it very intentionally to make sure that you're getting a great fit of people with your extreme interview process where folks come in and traditionally would pair with each other. And I love the idea of your goal being to get the other person hired is the goal. How has that changed? And have you opened up now to being able to hire from folks outside of the Ann Arbor area?
Yeah, I'm just going to show you here because I got a picture of it because everybody wants to know about this. So this is what extreme interviewing looked like for 18 and a half years. One big room of people. We pair the candidates one with another for 20 minutes, switch the pairs 3 times. So we're simulating the work environment, and we give each person in the room the weirdest instructions you'll ever hear in a job interview. Your job is to help get your pair partner who's competing for the same position you are, to help get them a second interview. Make your pair partner look good. Support the human being sitting next to you. If they're nervous, calm them down with humor. If they're struggling, help them out. We do that 3 times, send you all home. We didn't ask you any questions at all. And then if there were 30 of you in the interview, there would have been 15 of us watching each of you and writing down notes about what they see. And all we're doing that night, it happens within 2 hours. We interview 30 people or 40 people or 50 people in 2 hours, is we're only making a decision that night, actually, right after the 2 hours we spent with them. We were making a decision that very evening on who we invite back in for a second interview. And so it's very quick. It's high energy. We've had people tell us it's the interview alone has changed their lives because they've never heard of anything like this. We tell them we're looking for good kindergarten skills. We actually tell them what the failure modes are. We tell them it's the weirdest interview you'll ever be on because we actually want you to succeed. Most interviews are trying to get you to fail. We're actually going in the other direction. But of course, can't do this during the pandemic. And so the team said, I don't know, we got to hire a bunch of people. Let's try a big Zoom meeting. Let's put people in little breakout rooms 2 at a time with the Menlonian. And we were all nervous about this one because this being a really key signature dish of Menlo as well, we're like, will we make it work? Will it scare people? It worked beautifully. All the smiley faces are the candidates. All the pictures you can see are the Menlonians, because we didn't want to put on a public display, people who are interviewing with us. We've done this twice since last March when we started hiring again, and it has worked beautifully. So yes, this is, and to your other question, we have hired Peter from Chicago. We hired Sam as a summer intern from Texas. We hired Andy from Grand Rapids, which is a couple of hours away from Ann Arbor, and they have just stayed in place. We're making that work, and we've told them, if you want to ever move to Ann Arbor, that's fine, but stay where you are, because what I'm seeing in corporations right now, the big mistake corporations are making is they're forcing either A, we're getting rid of our office and you're all going to be remote from now on, or they're forcing B, by January 15th of 2022, you're all going to be back in the office. And that's the place I see most people quitting, because they're like, you're not giving me a choice in this. And I told the team, we are not forcing anything on anybody. You make the decision with your comfort level, with what you've gotten used to. We'd love to have you back in the office. We're going to still have a compelling office, but it is not a requirement.
Rich, there's still half a dozen questions, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So for that, I'm going to invite folks to feel free to answer the AgileTO survey on what you thought of this talk and what you'd like of others. The feedback form is in the chat window. Please click on it and provide your feedback. Keep your questions. Rich and his team at Menlo are incredible, and I'm going to I can't strongly advocate enough for taking advantage of the generous offer of going on one of those virtual tours where you can get all of these other questions answered. Rich, this has been a real pleasure tonight, and I love seeing how you've kept that intentional culture alive, even in spite of all of the things that you've been faced with over the last 18 months. So thank you so much for your time tonight. Folks, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thanks again to Agile Alliance for their sponsorship. Thank you to all of the organizers who helped put this together. And we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. We've got another great Quick Talk scheduled for 2 weeks from now. But Rich, thank you again so much. This was wonderful. Thank you.